I see myself as a very resilient person. The following week, Chris and I discussed my shortcomings and I presented myself with a streamlined gameplay. My technical skills at that time were shaping to be rather good, but what I was lacking was pace and endurance. With new goals set and an attitude nobody in this universe can stop, I started practicing on the skills I severely lacked. With 4 months to go, this meant single-minded focus. As I developed these skills, I also unknowingly developed technical know-how to help me in the Mother of Hard Enduro at the end of the year. I started to see a leap in my fitness, my pace over various types of relentless terrain, and was able to hold out for 6 to 8 hours of harsh riding. As the deadline crept closer, my nerves started to become more evident. With 2 weeks left, any training on the motorcycle has stopped. The focus now shifted to getting the bikes and kit ready. With our bags and bikes packed, we headed to the Maluti Mountains to battle it out no matter the weather. Over 200 kilometers of extreme terrain in unforgiving conditions. Interestingly, I was hesitantly optimistic about my chances this time. My head was in the right place and I know that I put in the work that was required. But this is the Mother of Hard Enduro. Anything can happen. We started in Maseru with round houses. A short circuit race in the capital of Lesotho. A race that provided entertainment to the local people, although round houses did not count as part of the 3-day race in the mountains. It was a lot of fun, thrilling show. With heavy rain the previous afternoon, we were notified that we will be racing a shortened section of the time trial due to river crossings that were no longer accessible and the terrain being much harder to negotiate. I head out with my team, determined to set a good time for a reasonable starting position on the next day. I quickly realized how slippery and demanding the terrain was. Never have I ever experienced such demanding conditions. I was able to set a time of 1 hour 46 minutes, which was roughly about 200 out of 220 riders. This was where I imagined myself to place. Right after I finished the route, it started pouring like you would not believe. It was a consistent battering for at least an hour. We arrived at our campsite irritated about the wet conditions and had to get our bikes ready for day 2. Friday we were notified again after the heavy rain that the starting times had been postponed and we eventually started 3 hours later. Friday was a nice balance between technical and flowy sections. It felt like I was on my game. There were a few places that were almost impossible to climb after the heavy rain, but luckily I was at the right place at the right time. A group of riders teamed up to help each other get over these obstacles. The locals were also very keen to help out in tough sections, as there was a reward waiting for them at the end. I finished the day in under 6 hours and was shaping up well. Still a long time in the saddle. The last day was where the roof really showed its teeth. With a positive mindset and the bike service ready to go, we headed out on the final day. Within the first 2 kilometers of the route, I knew we were in for a brutal ride. The terrain was destroyed from the weather and the 300 bikes. This caused a serious bottleneck that probably added an hour to most riders' time. Eventually, a few riders found a route over the mountain to miss the bottleneck, and I was hesitant at first, but eventually decided to also try the alternative, and luckily was successful. Right after the first obstacle, they sent us up into the mountain pass that felt never ending, with massive steps and ditches. Again, fellow riders helped each other over obstacles that were very hard to do on your own. I started to feel the strain on my body from the previous long and hard days riding. On the way to the next section, it started to lightly drizzle, and the route was very slippery. I was coming in a bit hot, and suddenly there was a huge drop-off. I tried to brake, but it was too late. There I went over the bars, me flying to one side and my bike to the other. Taking a few seconds to adjust, I got back on the bike, started the engine and released the clutch. Houston, we have a problem. I did not have any drive, and when I looked back at my chain, my heart sank. The chain was off, and I managed to pinch the chain between the front sprocket and the swing arm, something any rider dreads. It took me 30 minutes just to get a chain unjammed. Relieved, I started to realign the chain, and to my despair found the reason why my chain came off. The rear sprocket was severely bent, most probably from the fall. With limited resources, 2 locals, I had to fix this, otherwise my race was over. I dismantled the rear wheel and tried to bend the sprocket straight enough for it just to work. My first attempt was unsuccessful. My second attempt took a much more aggressive approach. I took the sprocket and looked for a flat rock where I could place it, and then took a sizable rock and beat the sprocket straight. I reassembled the drive, and to my relief, at this stage, I thought that I was dead lost. I assumed that for the rest of the route, I was going to be on my own. Heavier rain started to fall, and my anxiety started to escalate. Thoughts of me having to spend the night in the mountains started to surface. At one stage, I was struggling to get over an obstacle and wanted to give up so bad and end this. I sat down for a moment as I started to hyperventilate and felt the same as I felt during the MP. About 10 minutes later, I got back up and tried to get up the hill from a different angle, and was able to carry on and managed to get a good pace going as the route started to get a bit more flowy. But as the route started to get more technical, it also started to look like the route we practiced when we were in Lesotho earlier in the year, Belakoma Pass. Belakoma Pass breaks you down bit by bit the further you go. As soon as you get into a rhythm, you need to stop completely and make a U-turn, and these bikes don't do U-turns. I was exhausted, my arms were burning from the bumps and the hits whilst going down. Another hour later, I made it down to the end of the pass, hoping that this was the final difficult section. I made it to the marshal, and he told me that I could continue. This meant that I was still in the game and could finish. I headed out with my bike on reserve, knowing that this is going to be make or break. The section was flowy, and I was able to get a good pay. I reached the final marshal point where a couple was standing. I asked them how far till the end. The woman answered, "Only about 10 kilometers to go. You only have to get through Bushman's Pass." That answer was devastating, and I thought to myself, this race does not end. I asked the gentleman if they had any fuel, as I knew I wouldn't make it with the fuel I had left. Luckily he had some fuel to spare and topped me up for the final section. There I go, on my way to the finish. I made it to Bushman's Pass, and to my relief, DJ, one of our supporting teammates, was waiting for me. He grabbed a rope that was fixed on the front of my bike and helped me up bit by bit. At one stage, we were both blowing like steam trains. This pass was slippery and totally massacred by 300 bikes and heavy rain. With about 100 meters to go, Koos was standing waiting. I was again in tears to see the amount of support. Koos started helping me, pushing and providing words of motivation. I finally made it to Bushman's Pass with the entire team and my beautiful wife waiting for me. I cannot tell you enough how emotional this moment was. But still, the roof provided another obstacle that I had to overcome to get to the finish line. Rian topped my bike up one last time and I sped into the final obstacle. I decided to get momentum on my side and was able to soar over most of the obstacles. After a torturous 8.5 hours to complete just 35 kilometers, I made it. This was probably one of the most difficult and emotional things that I have endured in my life. This is the roof of Africa, the mother of hard endurance.
Itu nih, Ran.